Chapter 27. High and Dry. Here you go, Stephanie says, reaching through a throng of wannabe starlets to hand me a Diet Coke. I accept it gratefully. It's been almost a week since she showed up with Svetlana and basically single-handedly delivered me back to the world at large. And while I'm still miserable over being blown off by Adam, I have to admit that I'm feeling significantly better. Stephanie has convinced me to treat it like a nagging toothache or headache. Horrible, in other words, but something I can live with. The launch party for a new Condé Nast magazine, Stephanie convinced me, was just what I needed. But as I wait for her to retrieve her drink from the bar, I remember that depression, like a song stuck in your head, has a way of coming back even when it seems like it's gone away forever. Parties like this used to fuel me. I always had the feeling that something exciting could happen. But being sober made me realize how intensely boring parties like this are. We're all talking and no one is saying anything, I think. As a publicist who used to snub me when I worked at Absolutely Fabulous tells me how much she loves the column. When I was drinking, if I had a boring night, I'd blame myself for not being cool enough or not talking to the right people. But now I can see that I didn't drink to make myself more interesting. It was to convince myself that other people were. Stephanie joins me, sipping from her icy Amstel Light, and we watch a slew of club kids filter in. They're so perfectly outfitted in their Vans with their tattoos poking out of their True Religion jeans that they may as well have come from Central Casting. "You okay?" Stephanie asks, and I nod. She'd asked me the first time we went out together after I got sober if I'd preferred if she didn't drink, and I told her that she shouldn't feel like she had to deprive herself because of me. Tommy used to say that anyone out with a newly sober person should also not drink in order to show their support, and that if they didn't abstain under those circumstances, they may well have a drinking problem themselves. But Tommy worked in a rehab and didn't understand the world of plus ones and doormen who had articles written about them in magazines and open bars and gift bags. Drinking is as normal as putting on shoes to most people at parties like this, I think. Besides, it's not my job to go around diagnosing people as alcoholic when it's a self-diagnosed disease. And then, just when I see Nicole Richie and Lindsay Lohan pitch their skeletal frames against each other on the dance floor, Stephanie pokes me in the shoulder. "Oh my God," she exclaims, 3 o'clock, with a bimbo. Stephanie's not known for her histrionics, so I instantly know what her exclamation means and who she's talking about. Nevertheless, I'm not remotely prepared for the physical stab I feel in my chest when I look toward the entrance and see Adam walking toward us with a thin blonde who's scantily clad and inarguably attractive, albeit in a silicone playmate-esque way. And now that he's less than 20 feet away and growing closer by the millisecond, he seems less real to me than he has while I've been obsessing over him the past few weeks. It's almost shocking to remember he's an actual person and not simply a construct of my mind. "Remember, you're cool," Stephanie says under her breath. "Cool girls do not make scenes." I nod and then force myself to laugh like she's just said the most hilarious thing I've ever heard in my life. I laugh again in a way that I hope suggests I've been doing nothing but laughing uproariously since Adam and I last talked. He's now just a few feet away, so I glance at him and act surprised, like I've completely forgotten he exists until this very moment. "Hey, Adam," I say as casually as I can. I don't lean in for the requisite in LA hug greeting, but smile so broadly that it doesn't seem like I'm being passive-aggressive, just that I'm maybe too busy being happy to hug him. "Amelia," he says, looking me in the eye in a way that gives me the good kind of chills. "Hi," I say softly. He gives Stephanie an awkward wave and then leans toward me. I hold my breath as his lips brush my cheek. Amazingly, horrifyingly, all the resentment I have for him seems to evaporate instantaneously. "Adam," the blonde whines, nodding her head toward the bar. "I want to get a drink." "Oh, sorry." He just stands there looking at me. Our eyes are locked on each other, but he breaks our gaze by glancing at the blonde distractedly. "Lizzie," she huffs. He continues to look at me while Lizzie literally stamps her foot and points toward the bar. Stephanie, God bless her, looks at Lizzie and says, "What does everyone want? Lizzie and I will make a bar run." Without even waiting for a response, Stephanie grabs one of the girl's probably siliconed arms and starts pulling her away. "Diet Coke!" I yell after her, gratitude and anxiety rushing through my veins simultaneously. "Make that 2, Adam adds. And now that I have Adam in front of me, I don't know what to say. Why the hell didn't you call me back, occurs to me. Why don't you like me, also floats through my mind. Instead, I say, you look good. He smiles, and I notice dimples that had somehow escaped my notice before. Christ, did he have to get better looking by the millisecond? Wasn't this bad enough already? I'm sorry I didn't call you back, he says. I want to play it cool, but can't seem to. Yeah, what happened? I ask, feeling sure to be embarrassing tears springing to my eyes. What happened? He repeats, looking hesitant. Yeah, what happened? I suddenly feel enraged. You wanted to, but first you had to raid the Playboy mansion for one of Hef's cast-offs? This last part comes out of me before I even realize it. I've always seemed to lack the filter that stops thoughts from turning into phrases, and it can be incredibly inconvenient when I happen to be intensely jealous. His eyes flare. Jesus, Amelia, you're one to talk. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means that I run into you and you tell me how much you've changed, how pure and innocent your life is today, how that party girl is just a part of your past. Well, it's true, I say. He doesn't even seem to hear me, just keeps talking. So I'm all excited, thinking this girl I've always thought would be perfect if she just wasn't so out of control has actually tamed herself. I try to talk, but he cuts me off. But then it turns out that the very day I'm telling you how excited I am about you, you're all over TV, selling yourself as this sexy, wild woman who seduces groomsmen at weddings. If this were a movie, it feels like now would be when I'd slap him. But I don't feel offended, just misunderstood. I didn't seduce them, I say softly. Next thing I know, you're dangling from massive champagne glasses in magazines, Adam continues, ignoring me. And dancing on bar tables with, bisexual teenage nymphos. And here I am, the sucker who actually believed you were telling me the truth. Adam, I was telling you the truth, I say. The wedding was a long time ago, before I got sober. And the photo shoot and dancing in the bar, all of that is just me trying to play the party girl part. He looks confused. So you clean up your life and tell me you're thrilled about it, but you're still trying to convince the world at large that you're wild, and what's more, that being wild is the most glamorous thing imaginable? Well, when you put it like that, it sounds a little crazy, I admit. But it's just a column. It's what I write. It's not me. He looks angrier than he has this entire conversation. So I'm supposed to believe that you would attach your name to something, go on TV shows, and get in gossip columns publicizing something that's, quote, not you? And now I'm pissed, and I'm sick of being judged by him. Christ, Adam, it was an opportunity. I took it. No, I'm not the girl I write about in the column anymore, but I've lived that girl's life, and no one's ever made a big deal about anything I've ever done before. So if people want to give me money and a career for writing something that comes very naturally to me, what's so wrong with taking them up on it? He seems to consider this and takes a breath. I don't know, nothing, I guess. It just seems like just then I feel a large, sweaty hand clasp my shoulder. And next thing I know, Jeremy Berenbaum, an extremely drunk, exceedingly sweaty Jeremy Berenbaum, is embracing me from behind. Party girl, he shrieks, forcing large, fleshy lips directly onto mine. I pull away, but he keeps a damp, possessive arm around me. Jeremy, this is Adam, I say. I give Adam a please help me look, which he either doesn't see or completely ignores. Jeremy holds out one hand to Adam, while the other stays firmly clasped to my shoulder. How are you, man? Jeremy Berenbaum. Adam shakes one of Jeremy's hands as he eyes the other one, which is in the process of snaking its way from my shoulder to my waist. Adam Tenser, he says, somewhat coldly. Hearing the tightness in Adam's voice, I feel physical pain. Had he been telling the truth? Am I really, quote, this girl he always thought would be perfect? And who the hell is the wannabe playmate? Adam and I were actually in the middle of a conversation, I say, removing Jeremy's hand from my waist. Hey, no problem, he says, but he has bad drunk written all over his face and doesn't move. He surveys the room, spies a waitress carrying a tray of Jell-O shots, and motions her over. Grabbing 2 cups off her tray, he leers at me. What do you say, party girl? Want to do shots and get crazy like last time? No, I snap. This is all going so horrifically wrong. I turn to Adam to explain things, thinking he may even laugh about how I tricked people into thinking I was doing shots. But the look on his face tells me not to bother. Excuse me, he says to Jeremy, not even looking at me. I'll leave you two to your shots. He glances at me as he starts to walk away, and I start following him. Adam, stop. I need to explain. I grab his arm, and he turns around to face me. No, you don't, Amelia. Seriously, I don't know what game you're playing here, but I really don't want any part of it. He shakes me off and keeps walking. Tears sting my eyes as I start to follow him, but I suddenly realize that there's no point. As I watch him make his way over to Stephanie and Lizzie near the bar, Jeremy envelops me in a hug. Forget about that tool, Jeremy says, and for some reason this seems incredibly supportive. He probably thinks he's hot because he's on some sure-to-be-canceled series. I feel suddenly grateful for Jeremy's presence, so I turn around and smile at him. He takes my hand. Seriously, he says, I don't know what you have going on with that guy, but he sure doesn't seem to treat you right. I nod as a tear falls down my face. You're right. Jeremy reaches over and wipes the tear away, and the act seems incredibly gentle, especially for someone who seemed like a drunken buffoon about 5 minutes ago. At least he's being nice to me, I think, which is more than I can say for Adam. Plus, this party sucks, Jeremy says. It would make anyone cry. For some reason, this strikes me as incredibly hilarious, and I start laughing like I haven't in weeks. When Jeremy grabs my hand this time, I don't shake him off. What do you say we get the hell out of Dodge, he asks, as he gives me a spontaneous twirl. Have an after party at my place. My eyes land on Adam and Lizzie making their way to the exit, and then on Stephanie, now talking to someone near the bar. I wave to her and mouth that I'll call her tomorrow. Why the hell not, I say. Jeremy's house, nestled high in the Hollywood Hills, has a view not only of LA County in the valley, but also of the roofs of houses belonging to Keanu Reeves and Leonardo DiCaprio. As I look at the incredible view, an altogether bizarre thought occurs to me. Roughly translated, the thought is that I'm probably not an alcoholic. Suddenly, everything becomes incredibly clear. I never really enjoyed drinking all that much. It always just made me feel kind of achy and tired. But I allowed Tommy and everyone in rehab to convince me that being a coke fiend and an alcoholic were one and the same. I could see now, and Christ, any sane person could surely see, alcoholism and addiction were entirely different. And I'd spent the past 6.5 months in meetings with people that, now that I thought about it, seemed incredibly insane. Justin was really the only person I felt connected to, and he had distanced himself from pledges altogether. So why had I allowed these other militant, sober people to influence me so much? Of course, I've been listening enough in meetings to have heard people talk about how this might happen to me, how one day my, quote, disease would probably try to convince me I wasn't an alcoholic. But if I didn't actually suffer from the disease, it couldn't be my disease convincing me of anything, could it? Besides, who the hell believes that diseases can talk? The only person who could answer this, the only person who'd understand, is Justin. With Jeremy inside checking his messages and emails, I pull my BlackBerry out of my bag and speed dial Justin. It rings, and then I hear, I'm sorry, the mailbox for the person you are calling is full. Please try again later. It's that damn recorded voice lady, the one who always sounds so harsh and yet calm. It's a voice that couldn't ever be in the midst of a crisis or important quandary because she's not real. Suddenly, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what is real. Justin would know. But since he's one of these utterly modern creatures who uses his cell phone as his home phone, there's nowhere else I can try him. I could call Stephanie, but I know that try as she might, she won't ultimately understand what I'm going through right now. And for some reason, I'm just not in the mood to hear Rachel's opinions at the moment. They say that when you want to drink, you're supposed to call someone in the program before you do. I tried, I tell myself. I did exactly what they told me to do. So baby, what do you say? I've got a 1995 Chateau Margaux that I could crack open if you're game. Jeremy joins me on the balcony, and I detect the distinct scent of Drakkar Noir that wasn't there before. Jeremy, I have to tell you something, and it's going to sound a bit crazy, I say, looking down at the infinity pool. I like crazy. If a voice could leer, this is what it would sound like. I don't drink, I say. I'm sober. He looks confused, so I add, I went to rehab. But I faked doing the shot that night at the Roosevelt, I say, and he crinkles his forehead as he tries to remember the night. Water looks like vodka when it's in a shot glass, I add. No way, he says, looking bizarrely intrigued. But why? Well, I used to be really wild and crazy, I say. Holed up by myself at home doing coke crazy. I was completely out of control, and I lost my job and was just generally a real a-hole. Then, just as I got it together, I was given the chance to write a column documenting my wild and crazy life, and it was too good an opportunity to pass up. So I do the column, calling all my information from my old life, and act the part when you have to, he says, nodding approvingly. That is crazy, baby. I like it. I smile, relief over having gotten this off my chest flooding through me. You don't think I'm completely out of my mind? I ask. Now it's Jeremy's turn to smile. Oh, I do, he says, in a great way, though. He turns to walk back inside. So, what can I get you? I have cranberry juice and Perrier, so I can make you a... That's the thing, I interrupt. I haven't had a drink in 6.5 months, and I'd like one now. But I thought you just said... I said I was a coke fiend. It's the people at my rehab who told me that meant I was an alcoholic, too. He looks at me carefully. I've always heard that those people like to go around calling everyone alcoholic, he says. I nod. They do, all of which is meant to say, yes, I'm game for splitting that bottle of wine. Jeremy looks me over, then nods. Great, he smiles. Let me go get it. The first thought I have when I sip from the crystal goblet and feel the bitter and familiar tasting liquid coasting down my throat is this what all the fuss has been about? The rehab and the slogans and the meetings and the incessant talk about feelings has all been about this liquid? Feeling even more empowered, I take another sip. It tastes fine, nice even. Not like the first drop of water after having been stranded in the desert for 6.5 months, not even close. Clearly, I say to myself, if I were really an alcoholic, this moment would feel monumental. But to me, right now, it just feels like I'm drinking a liquid. This is nice, I say, smiling at Jeremy. I've never been able to tell the difference between Trader Joe's $10 wine and the kind that people save for eons because it's such a great vintage or whatever. This has always made me slightly self-conscious. If I were an alcoholic, surely I would have studied wines and gone to tastings and whatnot, I tell myself, as Jeremy blathers on about why the wine's particular year is so crucial. We move to the living room, where Jeremy gets out a photo album and starts pointing out pictures of him with Al Pacino, his mom, his brother, and what looks like all of the current and former Laker girls. And it all feels very sophisticated. The wine drinking, the multi-million-dollar mansion, the photos all gathered in green leather binders. If I were at Adams, I think, we'd probably be drinking out of cans and sitting on his futon. I can't believe you thought you were an alcoholic, Jeremy says, as I sip from my wine and examine a photo album page dedicated to a film festival, complete with pictures of Jeremy with indie darlings like Aaron Eckhart and Catherine Keener. You're barely sipping your wine, he says. I know, I say, glowing with this latest revelation to add to my arsenal of information about what a good decision it was to drink. I take another small, delicate sip to emphasize the point. I walk outside to smoke, and Jeremy joins me a minute later, bringing a freshly opened bottle of wine. This seems weird, seeing as there's no way we could have possibly finished the first. He seems to be telling me some story about how, when he was an assistant at ICM, he had to take his boss's dog's stool sample to the vet. I'm so riveted by the concept of him having a job as demeaning as I did when working for Holly that I forget to ask him why he opened a new bottle of wine when we couldn't have finished the first one. We continue to drink the wine, and I blow smoke rings and talk about my life, my column, my feelings on various and sundry topics, and Jeremy mostly listens, piping in occasionally or laughing. It's starting to feel a little like a performance I'm giving, and he's watching, but neither of us seems to mind. I spontaneously decide to recite dialogue from Greece, which I saw about 199 times during my formative years, and thus can recite verbatim, complete with Australian accent for Sandy and New York accent for Danny. Later, we're in the living room, and it occurs to me that I might be buzzed because Jeremy seems to be holding my hand while I'm talking, and I don't seem to be snatching it back. When he leans in to kiss me, though, I feel suddenly sober. I need to smoke, I say, standing up and walking to the balcony. Jeremy follows me outside. As I light a cigarette, I see him reach into his pocket and pull his hand out with his fingers folded over as they clasp something. I don't feel bad about giving you the wine, he says. And I think that this seems like an oddly serious comment to be making at this point, seeing as we've mutually decided I'm not and have never been an alcoholic. But I do feel a little bad, he says, about the ecstasy. I look at him confused, thinking for one brief, horrifically wonderful second that he's dosed the wine with something and I've thus just done drugs without it having been my fault. Then I glance into his previously folded hand and spy a slew of small white pills gathered there. Is it ecstasy? I've done it a bunch of times, but I've usually been so drunk or wired by that point that I don't really remember what it looks like. Well, my problem was with drugs, I say regretfully. I mean, I was addicted to coke, and that's a drug, so doing a drug is out of the question, right? I'm not sure if I'm asking a rhetorical question, but it doesn't really matter because by the time the sentence is out of my mouth, I've already grabbed a pill and gulped it down with the wine. I look at him as he swallows one himself, and I want to feel guilty for having just taken a step down the proverbial rabbit hole. But that age-old I just took drugs feeling kicks in, and I'm excited. Like I'm about to take a trip where my head will leave me alone for a little while. And then I think, well, since I've already taken one and clearly blown this whole sobriety thing, I may as well take another one. I mean, if I'm going to go out, why not go all out? So I ask Jeremy for another pill and light another cigarette and wait for that feeling of deliriousness to start rushing over me. I don't feel anything, I say to Jeremy as he puts U2 on the outdoor CD player. He looks at me. You're sweating bullets, he says. Trust me, you're feeling something. I feel my forehead and notice that it is uncharacteristically moist, but I don't do drugs to sweat, I do them to feel good. And since when does sweating mean I must be feeling good? At my senior prom in high school, my boyfriend and I took ecstasy and didn't tell our friends because we thought they would judge us. But trying to hide the high I was feeling over dinner took its toll on me, and my trip turned decidedly negative. By the time prom was over and we were at the after party, the two other couples from dinner found out what we'd done and spontaneously decided they wanted to do ecstasy too. They all had an amazing time. I remember sitting on a couch, trying to figure out why exactly I couldn't seem to communicate with anyone, while watching one of the girls, who'd never touched drugs before, jumping up and down and shrieking, I feel like I'm dancing on a cloud. This is the best I've ever felt in my life. I watched Jeremy open another bottle of wine, feeling convinced that ecstasy must not be for me. Can I see those pills again, I ask. Jeremy smiles and pulls another one from his pocket. Open up, he says. And even though the act seems overly intimate, almost invasive, I want the pill too much to care. My jaw falls open, he pops a pill in my mouth, and I take another swig of wine. Pretty soon after that, I feel extremely animated, so I start scrounging around his CD cabinet looking for music that I can dance to. But when Jeremy mentions that he has a sauna, that seems so thoroughly interesting that I immediately insist on seeing it. This house is like an amusement park, I think, as I bound up the stairs after him, realizing that the thought doesn't make much sense and wondering why I'm so excited about a sauna when I grew up with one. Turns out I don't so much want to take a sauna as just see it, and once I've seen it, my mind has moved on to something else. A cigarette, another glass of wine, maybe a cocktail, maybe we should go out to a bar. My brain leaps from one possibility to another, attempting to land on the perfect plan of action that will keep my high alive. And then I think of Adam and what a crazy liar he must think I am, and the thought feels so sad and overwhelming that it seems like it might take over my entire body and mind. I think I'd like to take another pill, I say to Jeremy as we leave the bathroom with the sauna. I don't know. He looks slightly concerned. This is pretty strong stuff, and you've had a lot already. I can read his face perfectly. Girl says she's sober, then goes off the wagon, and now appears to be going on some drug binge, which will probably end with a 911 call. Look, I can handle my drugs, trust me, I say, and hold out my hand. It feels uncomfortable to be having to ask someone for drugs. When I did coke, I was almost always the provider. Let's split one, Jeremy finally says, and he breaks a pill in half. As we go down to the kitchen for more wine, it occurs to me that I don't really like him at all, and I don't even mean romantically. While swallowing my half of the pill, I wonder why I'm even spending time with someone I wouldn't want to talk to for 10 minutes. That's when it occurs to me that this entire night may well have been a massive mistake. After a few more cigarettes, I realize I'm a little tired, so I lie down on one of his overstuffed velvet couches. I think your ecstasy kind of sucks, I say, as I tuck one of his oriental rug-covered pillows under my neck. Trust me, this is the best in town, Jeremy says, pulling a pillow of his own from the other side of the couch under his neck and mimicking my position. My guy is the go-to guy for everyone who works on the Fox lot. I guess I close my eyes for a while because when I open them, I feel groggy and confused. At first, I don't remember where I am, and the second I do, I feel even more confused, especially when I realize that Jeremy's lips are on mine and we're kissing. "Oh, God," I say, pushing him away and sitting up. He smiles at me, and I notice that his pupils are enormous. He trails a finger on my leg, and even though I hate it when people do that, and I'm fairly convinced he's taking complete advantage of me, I still feel bad when I move my leg away. I gaze around the room and see empty wine glasses filled with cigarette butts, CDs scattered all over the floor, and my favorite Theory jacket crumpled in a heap by the deck door. And I'm suddenly overwhelmed by a specific kind of emptiness that I haven't felt in over 6.5 months. "I should probably go," I say, walking over to my jacket and picking it up off the floor. "What time is it?" Jeremy glances at his silver Rolex. 3:30 a.m., he says. "Come on, don't even think about going home. I can't drive you in this condition." "I'll call a cab then," I say. Like it's the most normal thought in the world, even though I can't remember the last time I called one. Do we even have cabs in LA? "You're being silly," he says, standing up and walking over to me. "You should just stay here." Now, I don't know if it's the fact that his pupils are making him somehow resemble what I think the devil might look like, or if I just need to get as far away from this experience as quickly as possible. But I reach for my bag, pull out my BlackBerry, dial information, and ask for yellow cab. Every city surely has a yellow cab. "Amelia," Jeremy says, as Eureka, the operator, connects me. "You can stay in one of the guest rooms. We don't have to do anything." Something about the way he says that utterly convinces me that I won't be left alone no matter what room I'm in. I don't know if the drugs are making me paranoid or if I'm having some kind of a clairvoyant vision, but I don't have any interest in finding out. "What's your address?" I ask, and he reluctantly says it. I repeat it to the yellow cab receptionist and hang up, feeling like this is the smartest move I've made in hours. And then Jeremy suddenly seems overwhelmed with concern, or at least paranoia, or perhaps disappointment that he shelled out almost his entire supply of E and several expensive bottles of wine and isn't even going to get laid for his efforts. "Look, I feel sort of bad about all this," he says, following me out to his patio, where I pick up a nearly empty pack of Camel Lights I'd left on the table. "Don't," I say, but my voice is cold. Now that I've decided I'm done, I want him out of my face. "I make my own decisions," I said. "There's nothing to feel bad about." He hands me one of my plastic 7-Eleven lighters. "I don't think this is anything we need to tell people about," he says. I feel like I can suddenly read his paranoia, which is telling him that a variety story on the hotshot movie producer who coaxed a columnist out of her sobriety could be imminent. I nod just as I see the taxi pull up outside. "Bye," he says, pulling me in and giving me a kiss on the cheek, like this has been a perfectly lovely and appropriate evening. "I'll call you." I start walking toward his front door, realizing that I seem to be having some trouble walking without falling. I want to say please don't, but I don't have the balls. When I get to the door, I turn around to look at him one last time. "You should probably get a new drug dealer," I say, and then I leave.